Folks, I have an absolute whopper of a Battlefield of the Mind video put together for you guys today. You probably want to, if you have the ability to, stop what you're doing, go get cold beverage, and sit down and watch this video front to back. If you don't have that ability, put it aside for later, but definitely remember to watch this video. Because if this doesn't make you think, if this doesn't show you how backwards things have gotten in the world that we live in, I don't know that you'll ever have the ability to comprehend it. Now, over the last few years, there has been this big debate about, is there really a difference between a man and a woman? And can a man just decide he's a woman? And can a woman just decide that she's a man? I have something that I don't think even the most liberal, left-wing progressive could possibly argue about. I don't think once they see this that they would be able to argue anything other than the fact that men are men and women are women. And regardless of whatever you perceive, nothing changes that. Now, normally, we talk about this stuff over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel. Only $1 a month, fully refundable, first 90 days, no questions asked, taking the gloves off. I'm going to include this video here today because I think this one is so important. Now, full disclosure, I had a conversation last night with a young woman that I knew from the military years ago, and we were talking about different things and bantering things back and forth, and it reminded me of a certain situation. And I'm not going to get too much into the personal end of it, but what I'm going to do is show some imagery and ask for your reaction, your initial reaction to the imagery. Now, it's not X-rated or anything salacious, but it's going to prove something, the initial reaction versus just introducing a little bit of information. So here we go. First image. What would be your first initial reaction to this image? Now, the vast majority of people would say, oh, yeah, that's like relationship goals kind of stuff. I love that moment when the world hasn't disturbed us yet. We're asleep. Everything's quiet and everything's perfect. And you've got somebody in your life and it's really great. And the vast majority of people who initially saw this image would react to it with a thumbs up or a heart or a 100 or some type of a positive reaction. Now, depending on just small amounts of information given to certain people based on their gender, you could tell who were men and who were women without even looking at them. Let me introduce a piece of information. The picture you're looking at is your son. He's late for school. He's 17 years old. You open the door. This is what you see. Now, most dads, if it was his 16, 17, or 18-year-old son, would not react the way mom would. Mom and dad would react viscerally differently. Now, instead of it being your 16 or 17-year-old son, what if it was your 16 or 17-year-old daughter? And late for school, you go up, the alarm's going off, they're still asleep. Your mom, and you walk in, you react one way, but if you're dad, you react an entirely different way. And you could look at the data. You could simply look at the data and you could say, yep, all those people with the negative response, those are all men. Those with the kind of negative, probably mom. But if it's the son versus the daughter, the relationship, the reaction would be very, very different. Even though looking at it, generally speaking, most people would have a positive reaction. Now, why is this the case? It's something called the fundamental attribution error. Remember the 24 cognitive biases, the 24 logical fallacies that we talk about? This one is a big one. we tend to overestimate the role of dispositional factors and underestimate the impact of a situation. Meaning, if something good happens to us, we like to blame ourselves. But if something bad happens, we like to look at external factors. And this is a very easy thing to identify whether you're a man or whether you're a woman. It goes along with something called the false consensus effect, and we'll get into that here in just a minute. Now, what if you saw this image? You see, to artificial intelligence, there's no difference between this image and this image, other than one has color, one's in black and white, and one appears to be inside, one appears to be outside. That's the only difference between the two images to artificial intelligence. Now, if it was mom or dad of either one of these individuals, and let's say it's a Sunday afternoon after church, and you walk out in the backyard, and there's either your son or daughter with their boyfriend or girlfriend laying in a hammock, you would have a completely different reaction than if you walked in on them having fallen asleep from the night before, and they were late for school. You see, you wouldn't necessarily care if they were late for church. In this particular case, the second part of church that happens on Sundays. Because Sunday's just about relaxing. You're like, well, this is different. See, to us, it's different. As parents, it's different. But to when we were younger, when we were that age, and we would have looked at an image like this, let's say it was our brother or our sister, nobody would have seen it in any kind of a negative light. Especially, if this was like a regular relationship. So I guess it just goes to perspective on something, and I'm going to tie it in to something else. How many of you know who this guy is? This is a guy named Dion Long. He played for Maryland back in 2012, 13, 14, and ended up in the NFL and played for a couple of different teams. Dion Long was cut from the Rams because during training camp, he brought a woman into his dorm room. Now, he's a full-grown man, but they had a rule. They had a rule that you couldn't have women in the dormitories at training camp in football. Now, you might ask, sorry about that, you might ask why. Why would they do this? Well, I think a lot of people would be able to understand, okay, these guys are in training camp, and sometimes women can be a distraction because of the sexual aspect of it. But wait a minute. They're a business. This is a picture of Mike Fisher actually cutting the guy from the team. Women are a distraction. Women are a distraction, and it's a bad thing to the point where you can get cut from the team. This guy rolled out a billionaire pop star into the life of the entire NFL, and nothing happened to him. You can't tell me that wasn't a distraction. I mean, when you have, kids in school, you can make the argument as a parent, you can't let this go on because, that's just, you just can't do that at that age. That's going to be a problem. I mean, when you're older, and you have a job and you have responsibilities, sometimes it's the best part of your day. And I guarantee it's the best part of their day too. But here's my question. You ready for this? What about all of the gay NFL players? You see, here's my question. There's a rule in the NFL that cheerleaders can't at any time date NFL players, whether it's training camp or not training camp. But there are 19 male cheerleaders on the Baltimore Ravens. Are cheerleaders not allowed to date other cheerleaders, whether they're men or whether they're women? You see, this guy got kicked off the team for having a woman in his dorm. Well, what if he was gay? There's no rule against having men in the dorm. So he would have been fine if he would have been gay. He could have brought any man he wanted to into the dorm because the rule was against women. How does that jive? What were they doing? They were assuming that, well, all guys on our team are all heterosexuals, therefore all women will be a distraction. Therefore, all women will be a distraction. Now, in real life, guys, is that the case? I'm a full-grown man. There's no job telling me, hey, you know what? We're going to have a really rough week, so you're not allowed to have your wife sleep with you before you come to work. She can't be in the same bed with you the night before you come to work this week because we've got a really stressful week coming. We've got a lot of things going on, and we don't need you distracted by your wife or your girlfriend. It's hilarious. And what brought this up with my friend who was in the military, she and I were in the military, and they had the same rules in the barracks. There were male barracks or female barracks, and females weren't allowed in the male area, and vice versa. There were hours, and there were stipulations with the door being open and all this kind of stuff. And it was so much bullshit that a lot of us would get together and we would rent hotels off base. And whenever we would have a chance, we would just go sleep there. And some of us would just go sleep there because we could have somebody, in bed with us. And not for just procreating, just to have somebody there. And that was the point. We're full-grown adults in the sense that we were 18, 19, and 20 years old. And we were like, look, we're gonna do whatever we're gonna do. So tell me again that there's no difference between men and women. Because I guarantee you, I don't care who you are. If it was your son, you'd react one way. If it was your daughter, you'd react another way. If you're a guy, I don't care whether you're a heterosexual guy, I don't care what kind of guy you are, there would be a viscerally different reaction. Now, let's say this was your nephew. Let's say he was just staying over for whatever reason, and then you go downstairs, and the next morning he's crashed on the couch with some girl. As your nephew, you're going to react very differently than if you were his dad or his grandpa or anyone else. So it's just about, and I'm sure I'm going to get all sorts of reactions down in the comment section about this. But the point is this. Hold on. Let me see if we can get there. Well, I guess I'll just leave it here. How could there possibly be no lawsuits in the NFL right now with them saying, hey, NFL, you can't tell people what they can and cannot do in their personal lives based on your assumption of their sexuality. You would then have to assume that every cheerleader was heterosexual by saying they can't date any of the male football players. Can they date inter-squad? What if they are girls attracted to girls? Of all the thousands that have ever gone through it's got to be thousands of cheerleaders that have ever gone through the NFL. I mean, how is that legal? Whether it's the NFL, because what I'm saying is, whether it's the NFL, or whether it's Walmart, or whether it's McDonald's, or whether it's any other business, you all have to play by the same rules. You can't discriminate. Oh, and that's why I brought this up. Hold on. Because when the guy got cut, when the guy got cut from the team, it was 2016. Here it is. The NFL collective bargaining agreement in 2011 contained added protections banning discrimination based on sexual orientation. So that was 2011. This guy could have sued and said, look, you can't say I can't have a woman in my dorm room because that's discrimination against heterosexuals. Because you're not saying that men are not allowed, ergo, all gay players could have whoever they want, whenever they want. Because they're simply just both men. So, I'll leave it there. I mean, you look at it, a picture like this, it's completely innocent, and there's nothing salacious or wrong about it. It's just two people having that moment, before the world enters in and everything is just right and it's perfect. I mean, as far as guys go, your arm might be numb, but who cares? I mean, literally, who cares at that point? But the perception of it, the false consensus effect. When it comes to politics, they say it's believing that most people in your community support your preferred candidate based on only the opinions of your immediate circle. Generally, though, what it means, the false consensus effect, is that you believe a lot of people around you see the world the way you do. Meaning that if you and I and everybody else were to all look at this picture, we would all have the exact same response. We would have the, oh God, yes, those moments are awesome. Relationship goals, falling asleep with somebody you love, all this kind of positive stuff. Then we would all have that response. But it only takes small amounts of new information. And it really depends on who you are to change that information virtually 180 degrees. And that's how easy it is. So that's why I talk about battlefield of the mind. Because it didn't take much to turn that one picture from a positive to a, oh my God, I can't believe this, negative. Just one small piece of info. So I will leave it there. God bless. Still trying to beat this cold. Almost over it. Feeling better today. Just still fighting with the voice. Pray for each other. Pray for me. I'll pray for you. Lift each other up. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.